welcome the Honorable Colm Imbert.
Hello, 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 hello. Hello, 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 hello. Yeah. She had the thing I love. Where she from, I don't know. Rock she waist and go low.
Thank you, Minister Dial Singh, Member of Parliament for St. Joseph. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, Prime Minister and Member of Parliament for Diego Martin West and political leader of the People's National Movement. My cabinet colleague, Mr. Fitzgerald Hines, the chairman of the Samuel Lavantil Regional Corporation, executive members of the party, other cabinet colleagues, too numerous to mention, members of local government bodies, deputy political leaders, party supporters, the media, thank you so much. This is a big meeting. I was surprised. People standing outside in the road. All right. We have a by-election to win, so we'll keep that spirit up. And I want to correct Mr. Dial Singh. It's not 3 days money we had, it's 2 days. It's 2 days. And before I get into my speech, let me just reiterate some numbers that the other side, they just don't like us to talk about these things. But I want to keep reinforcing the problems we found ourselves in. And I brought with me a table which is the actual collection of petroleum tax in Trinidad and Tobago from the year 2012 right up to 2017. And in 2012, when oil was riding high, the total collection of tax from the oil sector was $16 billion. In 2014, it was $17 billion. As oil prices started to collapse in the middle of 2015, it dropped from $17 billion in 2014 down to $10.5 billion in 2015. But check what happened in 2016. Remember these other people, they had oil revenue in the order of 15 billion, 16 billion, 17 billion per year. Look at what we face in the first year, fiscal 2016, from October 2015 to September 2016, the first 12 months of the PNM government. It went from 17 billion to 1.03 billion dollars. You understand the kind of issue we found ourselves in? And that is just tax from oil. Tax went down from everything else because we are an energy-driven economy, gas-based, oil-based economy. So once the revenue from oil and gas goes down, the revenue from the rest of the economy goes down. So I'm just talking oil. From $17 billion in taxes in oil in 2014 to $1 billion in 2016 and $1.1 billion in 2017. So the first 2 years of this PNM government, the money we got from oil was $2 billion. The last 2 years of their government, the money they got from oil was almost $30 billion. So their 2 years, their 2014 and 2015, they get almost $30 billion from oil. Our first 2 years, we get $2. And that is what we have had to deal with. It has not been easy. And that is why we had to do some of the things that we had to do. We had to reduce expenditure. We cut down expenditure from 60 billion down to 50 billion. When we came in, they were spending $60 billion a year. They came in and they met the country spending 45. When PNM left office, the annual expenditure of the government was 45 billion. They carried it up to 50, 55, carried it up to 60. And they kept going, although the price of oil was crashing. We had to cut it back down to 50, and even 50 is not easy. It's not easy because I just explained to you. We lost $15 to $16 billion a year in oil revenue. Very, very, very difficult. But we've been managing. We've cut $10 billion out of public expenditure, and the country is still running. The country didn't collapse. You know why? Waste, corruption, and mismanagement. That was what was going on. How can you take $10 billion out of the economy and the country is still running? Obviously, they were thieving. That's the only thing I could say. I'm not supposed to use these words, and let me come off of that one time. Let me give you, I'm going to repeat some good news. That I spoke about in the mid-year review. Because the budget is for 12 months. So there's a tradition that after 6 months, which is the middle of the year, end of March, because our year starts at the beginning of October, after 6 months you do a review. And you look at what you expected to earn in terms of income. You look at what you expected to spend. So you look at taxes from oil companies, taxes from other companies, taxes from individuals, value-added tax, customs duty, business levy, royalty on oil, and so on. So we did a mid-year review, as governments have done for the last 10 or 20 years. And the reason why I can say, and I said, and I will continue to say, that under this PNM government, I can see clearly now, is because of these numbers. For the first 2 years, every time I did a mid-year review, things weren't looking good. For 2016, I went and I did a mid-year review. And if we were supposed to collect $25 billion by the middle of the year, we collect 15. If we were supposed to spend 25, we had to end up spending the same amount or just a little less. So it didn't look good. The income, the revenue that we expected to get just wasn't there. Because even though the price of oil began to recover, we just weren't getting the income from the oil companies. And that's another story. And that's why the Prime Minister set up a team dealing with that problem, where even though the price of oil is going up and gas production is going up, and I'll give you some numbers here now, gas production has gone up from 3 billion cubic feet a day to almost 4 billion cubic feet a day under the leadership of the team headed by the Prime Minister. Talking to Shell, talking to BP, talking to all the energy companies. Gas production has gone up by 25%. But we're not seeing the money in the treasury. And that's a different story, and that is for another forum or maybe for another speaker. So that when I looked at these figures in the mid-year in March of 2016, it didn't look good. When I looked at it in the mid-year of 2017, it looked bad, it looked worse. So we came along now to the mid-year of 2018. I said, let me see what we see now. What we expected to collect in what we call current taxes, and current taxes is income tax, corporation tax, business levy, custom duty, value-added tax, royalty. That's what they call current revenue. We expected to collect $21.9 billion by April, and we ended up collecting $23.2 billion. The first time I ever saw those kind of numbers. So we were expecting to collect 21.9, we collect 23.2. And when I looked down, because you really have to try and understand what is going on, because the so-called economists and all those people who like to talk and bad talk this government, they don't like these numbers at all, you know. Because what these numbers show is competence. That's what they show. And we are not supposed to be competent. I heard the Prime Minister talking last night, that is the only thing they could say, that the PNM is not competent. So when they hear these numbers, they get a pressure. So that I looked very closely. So they will say, oh, that is just oil. The price of oil went up, so it's nothing that you did. I said, all right, no problem. Let me take a look at the numbers. So, for the projection for taxes from oil companies for the period from October to April was supposed to be 1.2 billion. We got 1.15 billion. So we didn't get as much as we were supposed to get. We were short about 50 billion. The taxes we were supposed to get from other companies, companies that are not oil and gas companies, was projected to be 3.8 billion. But here what? We get 4.8 billion. So what does that tell you? That the rest of the economy is picking up. Not the oil sector, because the revenue that we are getting from the rest of the economy, from other companies, is much more than we expected to be. When I go through the numbers in all of them, things are looking much better than we expected them to look. But we're not out of the woods yet, and I want to explain what I mean by that. We still have a huge gap between this figure of current revenue, which is revenue from taxes and expenditure. We don't earn $50 billion, but we have to spend $50 billion. So this year we had projected to earn about $45 billion. 40 from taxes, 5 from the sale of assets, the CL Financial Solution, and borrow 5. So that even though revenue from taxation is looking better, we still have a big challenge this year, which is to get money from the sale of the CLICO assets. And I'll talk about that in a little while. But we also have to find other revenue streams. And one of the things this government did for the 5 years that they were in, trying to be popular, they waived something called property tax. And man, do they hate that property tax. I don't know why they hate it so. I don't know why. We went to the parliament recently, and we made some changes to the law to tighten up, because last year they had us in court for the whole year. For the whole of last year. Every time we move, they take us to court, and they're challenging the Property Tax Act and the Valuation of Land Act. We spend 12 months in court, but we win all the case. So that's all right. But they slow us down for a whole year. It's all right. Well, the court has dealt with it. The court has adjudicated. We're continuing now with our program to collect property tax. And I don't know why they hate it so. And what you're seeing is organized political mischief. Now, let me give you an example. I saw a letter in the Newsday on the 2nd of June. That's Saturday last. And it headlined Property Tax Assessment. And here it is. The editor. I received a visit from the property tax assessors of the BIR, and I assure you it was not pleasant. I was alarmed by the questions and the information they were collecting. They wanted to know who was living there, whether the home had air conditioning or security cameras. They then proceeded to take measurement of every nook and cranny of the home. And this person goes on and on and on, essentially saying they don't trust this government, they don't trust the valuation division. And the person ends by putting their name, Listra Maraj of Glencoe. Smell a rat? Smell a rat? In the Prime Minister's Constitution, I didn't read that part. Let me read that part. I am waiting to see when they will select my neighbor, the Honorable Prime Minister, for a visit to his home here as well as in Tobago. She put that, Listra Maraj, Glencoe. I smell a rat. You know why I smell a rat? Because I'm keeping a regular check on the visits that the field officers of the Valuation Division are making to various parts of Trinidad with respect to valuation of property. And I know what district they're in. I know they're in Barataria, for example. I know that. I know that they're into Maraval in my constituency. I know that. But I know they're not in Glencoe. So I contact the property the evaluation division. I get in with letter. I say, did you visit the home of Lister Maraj in Glencoe and measure every nook and cranny? So they check the database. They say the number of records with the name Listra, 206. Number of records with the name Listra in Glencoe, 0. Number of records with the name Maraj with a JH, 78. Number of records with the name Maraj in Glencoe, 0. Number of records with the name Lister Maraj in Glencoe, 0. That's all right. Maybe the name spelled wrong. Because you could spell Maraj M-A-R-A-J, M-A-H-A-R-A-J, and then this unusual spelling, M-A-R-A-J-A-J-H. I went and checked your name. They actually have names like that. So I said, all right, maybe they get the name wrong. Maybe the newspapers, when they were printing the letter, it's supposed to be Listra Maharaj or Maraj. They misprint. That's all right. I asked them, did you do any property valuation in Glencoe? Hear what they say. No field inspections have been conducted in the Glencoe community. So not only it had nobody with this name who is in the database, but we have done no field visits to Glencoe. But the ladies say, I receive a visit. They took measurements of every nook and cranny of the home, and I hope they go by my neighbor, the Prime Minister. This is organized political mischief and vested interest. Why are they afraid of this property tax? I saw something on Facebook where they work out a family, a man, the head of the household, earning $5,000 a month, $6,000 a month. And they're going through the personal expenses. UNC put this on Facebook. Income 6,000, tax 5,000. And so they mortgage 2005. And they add up, and put property tax 300, and the person will have no money at the end of the month. That's what they do, right? Food, transport, and so on. So they say this property tax will bust this person. But the first thing I do is I watch this thing carefully. I say, well, these are mad people. Because one of the first things this caring PNM government did when we came in is raise the personal allowance from 5,000 a month to 6,000 a month. This PNM did that. With that oil revenue dropping from 17 billion to 1, we gave up income tax to people earning a total of 72,000 a year or 6,000 a month. We raise it from 5,000 a month to 6,000 a month. So if you're earning 6,000 a month, you pay no tax. 0. But this UNC thing, salary 6,000, tax 500, and so they go in. And they hit mortgage 2005. I say, So somebody earning 6,000 have a mortgage of $2,500? Which bank approved that? These people could lie. And then when I come down at the bottom now, I say property tax 300. I say, let me work that backwards. Because let me explain how the tax works. The tax is a percentage of the rental value. It's a percentage. So if you're paying $300 a month in property tax, when you work it out, the tax is 3% of the rental value. When you work it backwards, in order to pay property tax of $300 a month, guess what your rent had to be? $12,000 a month. $12,000 a month is what the rental value of your property has to be to pay a property tax of $300. But they say the person only earning 6,000. You think it's easy with these people? They're just trying to frighten people. One of the things I publicized recently was that if you are a recipient of senior citizens pension or disability grant or food card or your total income is equal to or less than senior citizens pension, you are not liable to pay property tax. So pensioners don't have to pay property tax. It's in the law. It's in the law. And that has been in the law since 2009. So if you are an old age pensioner, if you're on a disability grant, or if your income is 3.5 or less, you are not liable to pay property tax. But these wicked people going on about frightening pensioners and poor people. The average property tax for the average person will be about $100 a month. That's all. And the minimum, which is another huge group of people, will be $40 a month. $40 a month. But you see the nonsense these people talking and writing stupid letters like this in the papers? They're not easy, you know. They're not easy. But let me move on. Let me move on. Because there's a lot of mischief in the system. And I came across something recently, and I felt so ashamed as a minister and a parliamentarian. I felt so ashamed. I want to read something to you. We've had some problems with our water taxis. Before we left office, the PNM government ordered 4 brand new water taxis. The purpose for these water taxis is 2 of them were supposed to go between San Fernando and Port of Spain. So as one would leave Port of Spain in the morning, the other one would leave San Fernando in the morning, and they would cross. So you would have 2 running up and down Port of Spain to San Fernando. So you could keep a regular schedule, say every 2 or 3 hours, a water taxi is going up and down between San Fernando and Port of Spain. The 3rd water taxi was to allow us to open up Chagaramas. So the 3rd water taxi was supposed to go from Port of Spain to Chagaramas, because we had a UTT campus down there, and we also wanted to develop that area. The 4th water taxi was supposed to go to Point 14. So you would have 4 water taxis, 1 from San Fernando to Point 14 and back, 2 running from San Fernando to Port of Spain, and 1 running from Port of Spain down to Diego Martin. That was the whole, that's why we buy 4. But the water taxis came just around the time of the general election. In fact, I believe they came about a month afterwards. And that scamp Jack Warner, but there are some bold-faced people in that other government, yes? The man take delivery of his water taxis. The water taxis that the PNM government design and pay for, he take delivery of his water taxis. But it didn't last long in that transport ministry. You know what they do? They mash up 1. So they try to take parts from 1 and put it in the next 3. So end up with 3. Next thing, 1 catch a fire. Next thing, they say, well, the one that catch a fire, the next one have a similar problem. So all of a sudden, we were down to 1 water taxi. So people were complaining. So we say, well, let me check that. So we ask NIDCO, what's going on? What's the problem? So they said, well, we're having all kind of issues with maintenance and the engines and so on. So I say, well, who maintaining the engines? They say a company called MTU. So it's a German company. So let me give you the German company made the engines, not maintaining them. They are the manufacturer, MTU. So I say, let me get a report. So listen to this. When the water taxi service took possession of the high-speed water taxis in 2010, they engaged a 3rd party to maintain the commercial engines. The company that they first engaged, local company, was a company called Trintrac, well-known local company. But under the UNC, all of a sudden, they decide there was a problem with Trintrac. So they changed the agent for the engines to a company called SVF International, a Venezuelan company. But they began to have problems with this Venezuelan company. So they say, let me try something else. And out of the blue, a Trinidadian company joined up with SVF from Venezuela and made a company called SVF Trinidad and Tobago. And they were the local agent to service the engines on the water taxis since November 2014. Listen to these dates. This joint venture between a Trinidadian company and a Venezuelan company called SVF The joint venture is called SVF Trinidad and Tobago, has been maintaining the water taxi engines for the government since November 2014. But let me tell you who the local company is. Local company is a company called Tropical Power Limited. And let me go into the records now and tell you who the owner of Tropical Power was in 2010. I have the annual returns of Tropical Power Limited. I have here the annual return dated 12th of February 2010. And I have the shareholders of Tropical Power. And the shareholders of Tropical Power is another company called Tropical Power Holdings Limited, and an individual called Stephen Cadiz. That's why I say I feel ashamed. I feel ashamed. Let me go back to the report from NITCO. A red flag has been raised with respect to the company that has been maintaining the water taxi engines since November 2014, because Mr. Stephen Cadiz was Minister of Transport between September 2013 and June 2015, and was therefore the line minister for the water taxi service at the time that SVF Trinidad and Tobago, a joint venture between Tropical Power and SVF International, was formed. I have all the records here, you know. I have all the records here. So, what y'all make of that? The man was the Minister of Transport. When he went into government, he put his son to run the company, and he transferred his shares to his wife. And that company got the contract to maintain the engines for the water taxis, and an activity under the Ministry of Transport while he was the Minister of Transport. And if you go now to the annual returns for 2018, guess who's back in the company? Stephen Cadiz. And that company is also maintaining the engines for 6 of the Coast Guard's fast patrol craft. That is why I'm telling you, I feel ashamed, because let me tell you something. The 6 fast patrol craft were purchased under the Manning administration from Austal in Australia. And the 6 fast patrol craft arrived in Trinidad and Tobago just before the general election of 2015. And guess how many of those 6 fast patrol craft are working now? None. None. But based on the information given to me by the Ministry of National Security, the agent for the engines for those 6 fast patrol craft is this company. So they have the agency for the engines for the 4 water taxis and the 6 fast patrol craft. I don't want to say any more about this. I just feel ashamed about all of this. I feel ashamed. Let's move on now to some more serious matters, or let's some more positive matters. That matter will go where it has to go, and will be dealt with by those who deal with those things. But let me give you an idea of what your government is doing for you. Remember last year they had us in court whole year with the CLICO assets as well? Now let me repeat what went on there. The government, the Manning government, bailed out CL Financial and CLICO in 2009 and 2010. Bailed out CL Financial and CLICO. The incoming government continued with the bailout. And by the time we came in, $23 billion plus of taxpayers' money had been pumped into CL Financial and Clico. And after almost 7 years, the government had recovered virtually nothing. The matter was supposed to be settled since 2012. It wasn't. There was an agreement between the Clico shareholders and the government that all the money would be repaid by 2012. It wasn't. So what they did is they kept extending the agreement between the Clico shareholders and the government. And every 6 months, every 3 months, they extend it, they extend it, they extend it. So when we came in, I found that this agreement that they would sell the assets of the CL group to pay back taxpayers had been extended 16 times. So this thing had been going on for 7 years, and no progress had been made. And there were no security over the assets as well. So we decided that it would give the CL shareholders a deadline, because this thing can't go on forever. Oil has dropped to $27 from 100. Revenue from petroleum has dropped from 17 billion down to 1. The country is under pressure. $23 billion of taxpayers' money gone into Clico. We decided we have to give them a deadline, that they have to start paying back the taxpayers of this country to balance the budget while we start to build the economy again. So they decided, rather than cooperating with us, they would throw us out of the arrangement. So we end up in court. So we end up in court for the whole of last year. But we were successful. We have gone to the High Court, the Court of Appeal. It even went all the way to the Privy Council. And we were successful. So we've been able to bring back some order and bring back some control. So there is a court-appointed liquidator in charge of the assets of CL Financial. And you've heard me speak about the National Investment Fund. But let me explain to you what it is. We are taking all of those assets that were in the Clico group, mainly Republic Bank, shares in Whitco, shares in One Caribbean Media, by the way, that's the Express and TV6. The government now owns 23% of the Express and TV6, just to let you all know. I think you all need to know that. The government or government entities now own 26% of Republic Bank, and we own a suitable percentage of West Indian Tobacco. We also own 100% of a company called Trinidad Generation Unlimited, or TGU. So what we have decided to do, take all these assets, 26% of Republic Bank, 23% of One Caribbean Media, Whitco shares, Trinidad Generation Unlimited, and put them into a company called the National Investment Fund Company Limited. And very soon, within the next month, this company is going to offer bonds to the general public based on the assets that we got from Clico, the Republic Bank, the Whitco, the One Caribbean Media. We have decided to offer bonds based on the assets for 2 reasons. One, your return is guaranteed. When you invest in a company like First Citizens Bank or other companies that trade on the stock exchange, the price could go up, the price could go down. A lot of people don't have the appetite for that kind of risk. But what we're doing instead, we are issuing bonds that are guaranteed. So the government is guaranteeing the capital and guaranteeing the interest. And let me give you some idea of what the interest is going to be. We're offering the bonds in 3 tranches: 5 years, 12 years, and 20 years. The 5-year bonds will be at least 4.5% guaranteed. The 12-year bonds will be 5.5% guaranteed. And the 20-year bonds will be 6.5% guaranteed. And you can earn more than that depending on how the companies perform. But those interest rates I have just told you are guaranteed. And there's an added benefit. The interest on the bonds will be tax-free. Remember we spoke about tax-free bonds? Remember in our budget and in the manifesto we spoke about tax-free bonds? Well, you're now getting tax-free bonds based on the monetization of the CLICO assets. And the beauty of all of this, ladies and gentlemen, the dividends from the companies will pay back for the bonds as they mature in 5 years, 12 years, and 20 years. So as the bonds mature, people will have an option to roll them over or to cash them in. Your capital is guaranteed, your interest is guaranteed. And the dividends from the companies in the meantime, from Republic Bank and so on, will go into a fund to repay the bonds. And the government and the taxpayers and the people of this country will still own 26% of Republic Bank. So we are keeping all of these assets for you. We're not giving them to the wealthy and the privileged. We are keeping them in a government-owned company for the benefit of you, the people, in perpetuity. So that is our solution to the CLICO crisis. And we're toying with that interest rate. You've heard me say 4.5% over 5 years, 4.5% per year for 5 years guaranteed. But when it comes out, it might be 4.75 or 5%. You wait and see. Because we want to make it attractive to you, the little man. You put your savings in the bank, how much you get in 1%? 0.5%? Imagine you could get a government bond that earning 4.5 or 5% guaranteed. And you can sell the bond if you get into trouble. The bonds will be tradable. So if you run into trouble, you can sell the bond. What do you think of this idea, ladies and gentlemen? That's PNM working for you. All the old talk about it will be a fire sale and we will sell it to our friends and our family. Old talk. This is PNM. That's the kind of thing UNC does do. This is PNM. We don't do that. So, it's been my pleasure to speak to you tonight. I want to tell you we're not out of the woods yet. I have to raise $4 billion from the NIF. I can, because the assets in the NIF are over $8 billion in value. So I can raise bonds of $4 billion. And the dividends from the extra $4 billion is what will be going into the sinking fund to pay back for the bonds. And as the companies do better with time, the value of the companies will appreciate, so we'll have the money to repay the bonds. But we're not out of the woods. I have to raise that $4 billion from NIF before the end of this financial year. I'm very confident that I will. We've already tested the market. While everybody talking, we're doing our work. So we've been doing market research, talking to investors, see how they'll respond to this kind of offering coming out from the government. Guaranteed capital, guaranteed interest. You could trade the bonds, you could sell the bonds, and your interest will be tax-free. And the kind of feedback we've got is that this will be a winner. And this is how we're going to balance the budget for 2018. But 2019, we'll have to hope. We still have assets that we can dispose of in 2019, but we will have to hope and we expect, and it is happening, because when I look at the numbers, it is happening. The economy is turning around. We expect that as things get better and better, we won't have to do this kind of thing anymore. And the revenue that we will get from tax, the revenue we'll get from value-added tax, from customs duty, and so on, will balance the budget, and this economy will become positive and stable because of your competent, caring PNM government. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Great to see PNM. And it shall be great.
Let's hear it from Minister of Finance, the Honorable Colm Imbert. He was inside